Repeaters, what they are and how to use them, by Paul, Mike 0 Whiskey November Uniform, or 26 Charlie Tango 730 if you catch him at 11 metres and PMR 446.
Hello and welcome back to the channel. Paul, Mike 0 Whiskey November Uniform, or 26 Charlie Tango 730 if you catch me on 11 metres PMR 446. That's just the shaft computer booting up. I'm going to need that in a little while. Not right now though. Okay, so the subject of this video is repeaters. What are they, what they're used for, and how you would use one, basically. So, we'll start with what they are. Basically what it is a radio transmitter and receiver mounted on at a high location, say on top of a large hill. So, could probably demonstrate this with some rather crude drawing with a notepad. So, say that was your hill. Not a very good hill, but we'll say that was the hill. Then, I just have to do stick figures because it's the best I can do. You've got person A there. Stick figures, that's the best I'm going to do. Wants to talk to... Oops, pen's not working. Choose this moment to run out. Yeah, pen's run out. There we go, try again. There we go, that's not better. There we go. Person B on the other side of the hill. Because the hill's in the way, they can't talk directly to each other. So, how about we put on top of that hill the repeater. Probably isn't working out very well, it's probably rather bad drawing. I'm not good at drawing, so finish off the drawing a bit. As I say, I'm not good at drawing. All I've got is a pen. And the pen just doesn't seem to want to work. That's right, completely now. Where in the middle of my drawing? Yeah, right. I don't think I've got another one. But the gist is, you've got person A there. If I can just bring it in. The repeater on the top of the hill, person B there. They can now talk to each other. Let's get rid of that. Rather poor drawing. Right. So, the idea is, it takes the signal from one person and relays it back down. How does it do that? How can it transmit and receive at the same time? Right, it has two frequencies, an input frequency that one person transmits on, and an output frequency that the repeater transmits on that the other person will listen to. And when one person stops talking, the other person then transmits on the input frequency. Now, on 2 meter repeaters, at least in region 1 anyway, I'm not sure whether it's the same in the other regions, because I've never really left region 1. Definitely in the UK, on the 2 meter band, it's a 600 kilohertz split. So I can give you a good example. When I find my FT2D, here we go. So, that's currently on 145.7625, I had to double check that. 145.7625. So the input of that repeater is 145.1625. The moment this radio's on the wrong mode anyway, It's on auto mode, so I'll have to wait for the repeater to wake up. Which, if Echolink's working, that would be any time now. But as far as I'm aware, the Echolink is not on. It might be though. I think it was on last night. I don't know whether the repeater keeper's fixed it. So I believe that one's GB3IR. So I will demonstrate how that works shortly. So basically, it's primarily there for those with handhelds and mobile stations. It's not really there for anyone who's got a base station installation. Oh! This repeater waking up. Bit of noise on the transmission, so I can't hear it that well. Yeah, so that was the repeater. That was GB3IR. Something woke it up. Not sure what, so I didn't hear any call signs or anything. The repeater will, once what one party has stopped transmitting and before the other party starts, will always either remain silent. Some repeaters do. GB3HG is one of the ones that does that off the top of my head. Or it'll give a K in the case of GB3IR, or it might just be a pip. And then a few seconds later, it'll either give another pip or another K, or it'll keep waiting, and then it'll shut itself down. Okay, so this separation of 600 kilohertz that requires large cavity filters to achieve. I'm not going to explain too much in detail what they are, but that's basically how the transmitter and receiver don't pretty much wipe each other out. Well, it'd be the transmitter wiping out the receiver. So I'm just trying to remember what else this is written. So if you're walking around with your little HT for 2 meters and you want to talk to someone and they're quite a significant distance away, these probably only have a few miles line of sight unless you're really high up, which I will be proving at the Blackpool Tower, all being well. So this is currently on the GB3IR repeater. I don't think there's anyone out there today, which is a shame. Should be for my demonstration a little bit later on in the video. So you want to find out what your local repeater is and where it is. I'll address you to a website called UK Repeaters. I'm just going to have to go on the computer to bring that up. I'll put something to the effect of that in the video. I'll just close off that window that's on top, because the window that's on top at the moment is actually the output from the shack cam, which is actually turned on and is actually behind me right now at the time of filming. So probably won't be by the time this goes onto YouTube, because I'll be shutting this computer down. This computer's a bit slow, it takes a while to do anything. So I'll put a clip of the UK Repeater website into the video, probably over the top of this next bit, if it actually bothers to load Chrome for me, which would be a good start, but then I've got to capture the video footage as well. So that's Chrome. It's loaded at last. That's why I have the computer on, you see. Unfortunately, this is not the fastest computer in the world. Needs upgrading, and at the time of filming, there's the COVID-19 issue, which might hinder the supply of computer parts. Although, having said that, not all of them come from China. So let's remove the instructions from my Serio High Power 4000 from there. That's in a different video. So the website you want is UK Repeater I'm going to load the website before I obviously start anything else on that. Make sure I've got it right. The internet connection in here is alright, it's a wired one. It's just the Wi-Fi in this room that's a bit rubbish. Because it has to go through that route, the Wi-Fi router in the cupboard. I don't have a long cable. Right, so the first thing you'll see is proposals, expired NOVs, which are basically repeaters, and then the backlog pending Ofcom issue. It's quite a long list at present, and licensed in the last 5 days. That's at the moment. Because repeater keepers have a NOV on their license in order to run a repeater. I'm just getting loads of things pop up. YouTube apparently. So if you want to find your repeater, you can either search for it by the call sign. If you know the call sign of it, it'll be GB3 or GB7, depending on the repeater. Or you could search for it by band. In my case it'll be 2 meters. And this will give you a map of the country which shows where all the 2 meter repeaters are, giving you a broad idea of 2 meter repeater coverage. And it'll give you links to listings for voice repeaters, analog voice, digital voice, simplex gateways, and packet stations, which would be APRS. So we're not interested in the APRS bit, we're only interested in voice repeaters, which could be analog voice like GB3IR and GB3HG, even though the latter does actually run a Yaesu DR1X repeater from what I understand, which is a system fusion repeater, but they have that function disabled, and they don't have the NOV for it. So I'm going to start capturing this page, so I'll just clear that little notification to the Action Centre. Oh, I've got another one. And I've got one for a new subscriber to my channel, but I already know about that. Right, so I do have some captures, image recorder. Right, so I'm going to start recording this now on the computer, and while I'm doing that, I'll stop the video and obviously insert it in over everything I've just spoken about. Okay. But I might insert it in the next bit actually. So, I'll be back shortly.
So, on the UK repeaters voice repeater section with 2 meters, you've got analog voice, DMR, system fusion and D-Star all listed. It'll tell you how many there is of what. There's a random 2 meter unit there. That'll be different every time. At the bottom, there are some links. The one we're interested in is 2 meter voice repeaters. If you click on that, you should get a list of all of the 2 meter voice repeaters, whether they be analog, D-Star, DMR, System Fusion. Now we're interested in 2 off this list. GB3CD at Stanley Crook, which is supposed to be analog and System Fusion, although I have heard in recent times it's been switched to analog only again, although it is licensed for System Fusion. And then there's GB3HG, which is, although using a System Fusion repeater, my knowledge of it was as thus the repeater was only licensed for analog use and the System Fusion side was actually turned off. So if we start off with CD, for instance, what we should get is the repeater. So it'll come up with the name of the repeater keeper and his or her call sign, the frequencies the repeater is operating on, the mode it's licensed for, and whether it's operational or not, and a website if there is one, and a coverage map, which gives you a rough idea of how to expect it to perform and where you can probably receive it and get into it. So that's basically all there is on that page. Now we've got one open for GB3HG as well, which is located at Sutton Bank, near Thirsk. Again, it'll be the same information: the band, the frequencies it operates on, the type of repeater it is, whether it can do things like C4FM or DMR or D-Star, that sort of thing. Although in the case of HG it's analog voice, and apparently system fusion as well. Even though as far as I'm aware that's disabled, like I said. So, and again there's a coverage map at the bottom showing you what the coverage should be. So, it's quite informative information, and it's enough to program your radio up to actually use the repeater. Now, when I loaded the page on HG, it didn't load the map properly, so I had to reload it, as you might see. Depends if I've kept that part in the video or not. I probably have. And then it did load the coverage map, and then it was all sorted, so could see the sort of coverage. So if you want to search for the two repeaters on ukrepeater.net, just put their call signs into the search box. If you're looking for another specific repeater's information, you know it's there, but you don't know anything about it, like the frequencies or what it can and can't do, put the call sign into the box, press enter, and it should hopefully come up with that repeater for you. Right, back to the video.
Okay, so I've opened up the UK Repeater website on the computer. I've gone into the 2 meter section. At the bottom of there is links to the different repeaters, which I've already gone over. I've chosen the 2 meter voice repeaters, and I've had a look at a couple of repeaters of interest to me. There's GB3CD, which is the first repeater to look at, which is located at Stanley Crook, near the Bishop Auckland Club's venue. And although I'm in a black spot for it, I can sometimes, if I'm in the right place in the car, hear it. Not always. And then there's the other distant repeater, GB3HG, at Sutton Bank near Thirsk. And I've noticed something interesting about the current status of that. And it's something I mentioned earlier in the video. Yeah, I think I might have got it a little wrong. But I might not have done. Because just because it says it on this thing doesn't mean it is. So, I'll come to that. You'll see that on the screen shortly, all being well. Right, basically, the gist of it is, if that hasn't recorded, as it should have done, because I got an error while after I finished saving it that there might be a problem, I went onto the UK Repeaters website. I went to the bottom of the section on the 2 meter repeaters when I opened that, and clicked on the voice repeater list, specifically voice repeater, so that would include analog, DMR, D-Star, and Yaesu System Fusion. The first repeater I selected was the distant GB3CD, which I've already touched on, and then the other distant repeater, GB3HG, which I can hear from here, even on a handheld, but I can't seem to hit it on a handheld, which is a bit annoying. And then I noticed something interesting about that. GB3HG is actually licensed for System Fusion, but as far as I'm aware, it's actually turned off. I often leave them a pound in their jar when they're at the Rip and Rally, because I do use the repeater from time to time, and obviously I want to help them keep it running. So there you go. I do use GB3IR as well, although I'm not sure how I'd go about donating a pound or so to keep the repeater running to the repeater keeper, who I actually know in person for GB3IR. I don't use GB3CD that often unless I'm in that general direction. So, if things have turned out right, you should have seen on the screen me going through the website, but if things didn't turn out quite right, then yeah, you wouldn't have seen it. But we'll see what happens. Right, so the next bit of the demonstration is to demonstrate how you'd actually call through a repeater. This is a live demonstration. This is actually going to be on the air. If you are listening to GB3IR at the time of filming, then it's no good to you now, but you are going to be on film, because you are going to be on film, basically. But if you're listening later on in the day, I should still be listening, so just try and give me a shout. I don't think there's anyone on there at the minute, but I'll demonstrate how you call through a repeater first, and we'll go from there. So, well, before I key up, right, what you'd say is, this is your call sign, in my case it's Mike 0 Whiskey November uniform, listening through the repeater's call sign, which in this case is GB3IR, for any calls. Can't do it right now because something's just keyed up on the repeater. Bit like this gentleman, but I didn't get his call sign because he was quite quiet in the back of the box. I heard a G0, but I didn't hear the rest of the call sign. So it's a bit difficult to get back to him because he was a mobile station. I did catch that part. So you probably heard how he did it, but you might not have done because it was in the back of the box, and there is quite a lot of noise in this room for some reason on GB3IR's frequency. Well, on this radio at the very least. So yeah, when you plan to do something, it doesn't quite go to plan. I just heard a G0, that's all I heard, so I can't really get back to him. So, and also somebody else, you could just do that, put the radio to one side, and someone thinks, oh, somebody else is going to get back to him. This is how repeaters get underused. This is something I might as well touch on now. Because as soon as I know what his call sign is, I'll try and get back to him. If I can get back to him. What was I going to say? So, if you hear a call on the repeater, you should get back to whoever it is. Because they obviously want to speak to somebody, and this is what happens. This is why repeaters are often underutilised, because nobody ever gets back to people. Obviously I'm in the middle of filming a YouTube video, and obviously I didn't quite hear his call sign properly, so I couldn't really get back to him. So, but he was there, and I know he was there, but I'm not sure if he's still there now. But that's by the by. So in my area, the repeaters I can get into are GB3IR and GB3HG. I can't get into any other repeaters from here. Well, not without having an antenna above absolutely everything else. And my QTH isn't exactly as high up as my previous QTH was, so it doesn't quite work out that well. Well, give it a couple of minutes, see if this guy comes back again, and I'll try and if I hear his call sign, we'll get back to him. If not, I'll put a call out and see if he comes back, because he might just do that. Because if you hear a call on a repeater, don't just think, oh, somebody else is going to do it. What you need to do is you need to reply to that caller. I'm a bit wary though, because I don't know whether this gentleman will appreciate being filmed for YouTube, but I will actually make a mention of that to whoever actually picks up, if there's anyone out there that's listening. Now, if you hear a call on a repeater, just answer it, especially if it's a club call sign. Now, in Richmond, there's the Richmond School Club. They're often on here when they're active, and obviously that'll be youngsters in training for their foundation license. In fact, any club which calls onto a repeater where they've got people on the foundation training course, just respond to them. And that way the students on the foundation training course will hear that there is actually somebody out there. So every time I hear what I think might be a club call, I'll respond. If I hear M7s, I'll respond. The last few nights at time of filming, there's been an M7 station, obviously very recently past this foundation, on GB3HG, but every time I've heard him, it's been at a rather inconvenient time, like I've arrived back at my work QTH, because usually it's been when I've been working. But I'm going to have a listen, because it's going to be a busy night tonight, it's Saturday, I'm going to have a listen out. Right, so I'm going to go back to demonstrating the procedure for calling out on a repeater. So we'll go back to that, and so again it's this is your call sign, this is your call sign, listening through repeater's call sign and standing by for any calls. So in my case it'd be Mike 0 Whiskey November uniform, listening through, in this case GB3IR, and standing by for any calls. See if there's anyone out there. Mike 0 Whiskey November uniform, listening through GB3IR, standing by for any calls. In this instance, no. You can call out another 2 or 3 times if you like. That's probably better to do that. But in this instance I'm just calling out the once because there's another station there, but they were quite in the back of the box, I couldn't hear them. Bit annoying that. Yeah. I'm not sure whether they've come through the IRLP or the Echolink, because I didn't hear anyone saying connected or anything. So I'll put the radio back down, because I didn't hear that call sign. So if I was operating normally and I wasn't talking to you guys, I'd ask the station to come back with their call sign if they could. But because I'm filming for you guys, I've got to put my focus on that as well. There will be... I will do some operating on this channel. I don't just talk about subjects, I do actually operate. And we can go from there. So repeaters, which is the subject of this video, always on a high location, always cover a large area, where giving better range to handhelds and even mobiles. Although having said that, you can still operate simplex in a mobile installation, but you're always moving with a mobile installation, and you might be talking to someone with a base station and then have to switch over to a repeater to keep the conversation going. Keep QSOs short on a repeater, that's something you should do. If anyone breaks in, bring them in, like you would if you were operating simplex. What else we got? And well, don't hog them or anything like that. So everybody has an equal right to use the repeater, and most importantly, thank the repeater keeper at the end of the QSO, because he or she may be listening. Although I've had actually QSOs with the actual repeater keeper of GB3IR actually on it. Although I actually do know him in person from the local club. So, repeaters unfortunately are also the target of abuse sometimes by people without the appropriate license that have got hold of, these, because these are quite cheap. And then they just deny people access in a similar way to what they would do on the CB channel 19. Basically key the mic, not say anything, play music, swear, act like an absolute idiot. Unfortunately, that means repeaters get switched off when that happens, and then the repeater can't be used by anyone. But if you hear anything like that on the repeater, or somebody on there bullies you, harasses you, intimidates you, the best thing to do is ignore it and try and carry on your conversation if you can. If you can't, QSY to another repeater if possible, or to a simplex frequency, because there is a chance that the idiot in question may not be able to do that. So if you hear anyone on a repeater that's not licensed, you do not under any circumstances respond to them, because that's in breach of the terms of your license. And obviously you'd have to report that to the repeater keeper and whoever else as soon as you're able to, unless the repeater keeper is listening, which could be at any time. So yeah, because unfortunately repeaters, like any publicly open system, are actually liable to abuse. I mean, it's not so bad now because of the internet, but it still happens. Just the other week on GB3HG, I heard someone non-licensed force a net on GB3HG to end quite abruptly. It is a shame. I'm not going to say what day or time or anything it was, because you never know, that idiot might be actually watching these channels on YouTube to see if they actually got a reaction. So I just know it happened, and I'm not going to say what day or anything, but unfortunately that's the sad state with anything opening. Unfortunately it includes amateur radio repeaters, because obviously the proliferation of Baofeng radios at £20 a pop, that doesn't really help. So obviously they've either got bored of channel 19 or 2755, and you know, even 2755 is illegal, but you know. But to be honest, the kind of behaviour, it's really only best to ignore it. There's nothing else you can do. So, but otherwise, repeaters are there for anyone with an amateur radio licence to use. The one thing I haven't touched on is the way to actually access them. Now, this radio is programmed up already with the appropriate information. The information necessary is on UK repeaters, and each repeater is protected by one of two means. A 1750 Hz tone burst, well, that's becoming very uncommon these days, and that seems to be only with mostly European and UK repeaters, as far as I'm aware. I don't think that applies to America at all. Or CTCSS, which is more common. GB3IR and GB3HG both use CTCSS of 88.5 Hz. So that's actually quite easy for me to remember. So as long as the CTCSS is transmitted when you're transmitting, you will open the repeater. If you don't have the appropriate CTCSS, chances are the repeater won't work, and you'll be wondering why. And then then obviously it's just a small issue of turning on CTCSS. And don't forget the repeater shift. It's 600 kilohertz, so, and it's shifted down when you transmit. So instead of say 145.600, it's 145.000. That's just an example. I think there are repeaters that operate on that frequency, but that's just an example. 145.600 on receive becomes 145 on transmit, and then when you obviously let go, it goes back to the receive frequency. So yeah, so the repeater does it completely opposite to how you would do it. So the repeater transmits at 145.600, for example, and receives on 145 megahertz, for example, and you transmit on 145 megahertz, and the repeater transmits back to you on 145.600 when you let go of the key, and that's the frequency you listen on. It's the output. So, hope I've covered that, because my knowledge of repeaters isn't that brilliant, but it's hopefully enough for this video, and hopefully covers the basics. And yeah, so we'll go from there. And well, if you are on the GB3IR repeater at any point, I am listening to it most days. If you give me a call, I should respond. If I don't respond, it either means I'm not listening to it at the time. Say, for example, I'm working. Or you can always try another repeater. GB3HG is a good choice for around my local area. I might be listening to that one. Or, if I'm not listening to either of those repeaters, for example, I'm at work, then you can't really get hold of me then. But if I'm listening to the hubnet, which can be the case, then just give me a shout on there. Because obviously I do have access to the hubnet in the house, and there is a gateway as well, but they're a different subject. They're not quite the same as repeaters. They do a different thing entirely. Right, and also, given the current situation right now, repeater on the amateur radio frequencies is actually going to be kind of useful in an emergency, used by Raynet if they need to use it. Although I think they use other means to do this. I think they use operation on 2 meters and 70 centimeters. I can't remember the exact term. It'll come back to me. Right, so yeah, but you can sometimes get emergency calls through a repeater. I did link to a YouTube video of exactly that on my radio blog. You're going to have to search a bit for it. I think that was a couple of years ago now. It was a repeater in Bristol, I believe. There was a chap out camping. The young lady fell ill. The young lady had an epileptic seizure, I believe it was. Not a nice experience to go through. Fortunately, as the gentleman was a licensed amateur radio operator, he had his radio in the car, picked it up, transmitted on the repeater, someone answered the call and rang the emergency services, and all ended up happily ever after, basically. Everyone was fine. So you can sometimes, but rarely, thankfully, hear emergency traffic on repeaters as well. That's something I didn't touch on. Right, I think that should have covered it. So this is Paul Mike 0 Whiskey November uniform, or 26 Charlie Tango 730 if you catch me on 11 metres and PMR 446. And I will try and get some more operating on film as well. So, well, there'll definitely be some from the top of Blackpool Tower. This COVID-19 isn't going to stop me doing that, unless Blackpool Tower is closed because of COVID-19, which could potentially happen, but we just don't know because of the current climate. So, yeah, and also, I actually wash and sanitise my hands because of the job I do. I'm going to have to, aren't I? I'm one of the people out there that just think COVID-19 is just a bad cold, basically. Right, let's talk of COVID-19. That's it, I'm gone. 7-3 for now.
Don't forget, you can subscribe to this channel and ring the bell to be notified of new videos as I upload them. 73 is from Paul, Mike 0 Whiskey November uniform, or 26 Charlie Tango 730 on 11 metres and PMR 446.